we prepare the stage to bring our next speakers on, I just thought that I'll share with you a very core childhood memory. This is when, as a kid, an appliance in my house really stops working. And then, as most of us would have had it, there would be that one uncle who would walk into your house, very confidently open the back panel of that appliance and say, "Tension mat lo ji, mujhe pata hai ki yahan pe chal kya raha hai," and fix it, or at least pretend to, whereas he really doesn't know what's going on there. But that was India's engineering culture back then. A mix of what I call enthusiasm and some jugaad, like we do it. But fast forward today, that era feels ancient because today we no longer fix machines in our living room. We are building machines that power the world. And no one represents that transformation better than our very next speaker for today. Now, under his leadership, CG Power has become a symbol of India's manufacturing resurgence. What was once a traditional engineering company, my dear friends, has today become a global force, one that stands tall with precision, with scalability, and of course, with credibility that I'd say travels and transcends across borders. If the world is quietly calibrating its electronics and supply chain, he is one such person who is shaping what that new global order lands. So let's shift gears and let's invite in the room Amar, who is going to take us through how India is engineering its rise in manufacturing and electronics across the world. He's the Managing Director and CEO, CG Power. Let's welcome him with a very warm round of applause, everybody. And joining him on stage is Ravi Swaminathan, Director of Avendus Spark Institutional Equities, who heads the capital goods and consumer vertical. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, please go ahead, sir. All yours.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, sir. Thanks a lot for coming down all the way for this keynote speech. We know that you have extensive experience in the manufacturing space, currently heading CG Power, and earlier you had a significant amount of experience in leading Ingersoll Rand, both in India and outside, including Middle East, Africa, etc., and Europe, etc. And before that, you had considerable amount of manufacturing experience in Bharat Forge. Also, I believe that you were heading the operations divisions of it. Me and the audience would like to maximum utilize the precious time that you have given to us to understand how manufacturing is panning out in this country, how it is over the past few years, how it has and how it is likely to be. So I have a bunch of few questions which are there with me. So one is related to the manufacturing side, and the second one is with respect to the electronic side also. So essentially, CG, I believe, is also looking at increasing their prospects in the electronic space also. You had got into OSAT and other associated activities. So have a few questions related to that also, so that we can pick your brains about that particular division also. So can we start off with first the manufacturing side, sir, with respect to the questions?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Ravi, for having me here. Pleasure to be associated, but he has been putting a lot of pressure on me as an industry veteran or something. I'm not. I'm a very simple person, but I'll try to do justice to whatever I know of and my views on that.
Sure, sir. Sir, first from manufacturing or capital goods industry perspective. So if you see, since COVID, there has been a significant amount of ramp up in the manufacturing activity which has happened in the country. So if we zoom out and think aloud a bit, from a capex cycle point of view, this is typically a relatively cyclical industry. At least to my knowledge, the last known capex cycle was between 2001 to 10. And then there was a lull. There was a period of lull. 2010 to 20 it was kind of flattish, where many of the listed and unlisted capital goods companies had seen order inflow being largely point to point was flattish. And post COVID, once again there has been a a significant ramp up in terms of activity where orders, revenue, and even profitability for many of the companies, including CG Power, had kind of significantly ramped up in the past 4 or 5 years. Just wanted to think about, get your sense as to where we are there in the cycle currently. What are the drivers which are driving the growth this time? How different it is compared to the earlier cycle that we saw? Because you had spent time in Ingersoll Rand for almost 15 years, so you might have seen, and before that you might have seen, during that point of time you might have seen the fag end of the earlier cycle also. So your thoughts on these?
Sure. I think, yeah, I can keep talking on this for probably an hour, but I know we don't have so much of time.
Yeah.
So let me go back into 1980s, 84 when, or 82 when auto industry went through the transition. And that was the time when you used to have Fiat and Ambassador. I think these were the only 2 cars we had. And then Maruti came in and the government stepped in. And I think that was the transition stage where, of course, there were some benefits, a bit of PLI kind of thing that happened, JV with the government of India and Suzuki. It worked pretty well. It really changed the horizon of auto industry. What we see today, it was not existing there, right? Cars breaking down, and then some, the young lady was talking about doing a jugaad and, putting water, and everybody has seen those kind of days. And we don't see any of those things now if you are properly maintaining. So from jugaad and repair, the thinking has shifted from last 3 decades to more reliability and predictability. And that's what the consumer looks for. So that was the transition of not only OEM as the auto industry, but also the auto component industry. And that really thrived, because without auto component industry, auto industry cannot survive.
Correct.
So practically I would say top 500 auto component industry also thrived from a small shop. I remember from Delhi's, Chandni Chowk to Karol Bagh, small shops, everybody transitioned to Gurgaon, Faridabad, Noida into the factories, and they're all 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 crore kind of a company now. So I think it's interesting to see how that transition has happened. And if you step up, into 2000s, talking about engineering, capital goods kind of industry, the similar thing happened, but it was primarily private-led investments. There was no government intervention as such to boost or encourage that kind of a thing. So if you see as a percentage of GDP, the manufacturing went up from 6 to 7% to about 13% approximately, the percentage as a GDP. So which is good, but not to the level where we need to be, right? We are, if you ask me personally, we are at least 20 to 30 years behind in manufacturing, even if we compare ourselves with our neighbors, China, right? We are at least 20, 30 years behind them. So we really need to be on the accelerated path to overcome that over the next decade or 2 to see at least you're, at the level playing field there.
Correct.
So coming back to the last, current capex cycle that I am seeing, yes, there's a lot of government intervention coming in. So if you see, the public capex that is coming in, the contribution has moved from about 1.7% to 3.4, 3.5%, which is not bad actually, but long way to go, and and we'll talk a little bit more on which are the areas where government is investing. For example, one of the favorite subjects I have is semiconductors, electronics. We see huge involvement from the government side, from AT, and the way government is really working with the private players is phenomenal. And depending on more questions, we'll be happy to answer that.
Understood, sir. Sir, when we talk about capex cycle, and when we think about capital goods companies, the first thing is the product that gets offered to the customer. So you were there in an MNC company, and you are there in an Indian company. So from a product perspective, and when you think about product, it's more from a capital goods angle. The key word here is technology. So what is the differences between say the product that is offered by an Indian company and an MNC company? Is there any gap which is there? Is there still a catch-up that needs to happen from a product perspective, from cap goods angle?
Very, very good question, and again, very close to my heart. And I'll again go back to auto industry because that's where I was born. I was fortunate enough to work in first, I think maybe 12, 13, 15 years of my life in auto industry. I was fortunate to work with Toyotas and Hondas of the world and learned some very, very good tools on that. I think out of all the industry, I still rate auto industry to be much higher level versus anybody else. Whether it's to talk about capital goods, engineering industry, power, everybody, the difference delta is this much. So it's a good news and bad news. Good news is because at least there's some industry which has taken the leap.
Understood.
Now, having said that, coming back to what do you see the differentiation, if I understand your question well, is between the Indian companies and the large multinationals who have been there for decades together. I think a couple of things. One is the foundation of Indian industry still needs to be strengthened to a large extent, because if your foundation is not strong, you can grow very fast, but then you can go down as well very fast.
Understood.
Okay? And if you see, I have been here for almost a year and a half in CG Power, and one of the places where I spend a lot of my time over and above my go-to-market, business, M&A, and all those things, or strategy is strengthening the foundation of the company, organization. We have about 18 factories across, and you'll see me at least half of my time goes into the operations side, working with the business leaders, with the plant people, to increase the foundation of the place very high. I'm not even accelerating my gears to full throttle for exports and the reason of that is I don't want to start exports and then fall down because the customers will give you one chance.
Correct.
Right? So if you fault on, it's not only the quality of the product, it's the quality, the way you manage the program, project management of this, the communication that you do with them, staying with the commitment. Once you commit something, how do you stay with that?
Understood.
Again, referring back to the jugaad kind of thing and chalta hai kind of thing, it just doesn't work. And again, I said, in a previous company, I worked for about 14 years, and I was fortunate to handle Europe. Last 5-6 years, I was running almost $1 billion in Europe with 12, 13 factories, and I was based in Dubai. And the thinking and the way you work things, there are some strengths that those people have, and there are a lot of strengths that we have. The kind of appetite, the fire, willingness to learn and deliver for Indians is phenomenal. I think we need to keep building on that journey. But what we need to learn is the program management, project management, customer centricity, build quality into the products. I mean, these are utmost important. By inspection, nobody is able to be a great company. So I would say to be there, that how do Indian companies become large multinationals? Indian large multinationals is get the foundation very, very clear, which means the manufacturing practices, the lean flow of the product so that the quality output is guaranteed, right? Number two would be think global, act local, right? So we should always think about, yes, you will become global, and making the world-class product doesn't mean that your product will be expensive. You should always have the lowest cost from manufacturing. Today, if you compare any of the products from China to India, I think I would say 99%, I have not heard about anybody who can claim that I have produced a product which is cheaper than what is produced in China with the same quality. Absolutely no. So we are way behind those. So it's always better to accept, because if you don't accept the reality of today, we'll never improve and grow from there. And last but not the least is innovation and technology. So one is either work on the in-house growth and development, build. India has great brain power. All our engineers from here, they are the ones who are working outside, right? So make place for the talent to grow and thrive in this country and build on those technologies, because we should not be only talking about lowest price. That's where at least I have never gone to the customer that I am cheap, that's where you buy from. It's always been high technology, high level of content on that across all the companies that I worked with.
Understood. Sir, and double-clicking on this exports angle. So, so far, if you see the past decade or 2 decades, Indian companies or even MNCs which are there, which are India-based, they have been catering to India subcontinent, either due to their capabilities or from an MNC perspective, it will be restricted to those geographies, etc. How do you see Indian capital goods companies' exports say, panning out over the next 10 years? You had touched upon it that exports, there's still a bit of gap which is there. But if you can give slightly more details as to the gap between the Indian companies and competing Chinese companies or other suppliers who are there, is the difference majorly due to scale or technology, or is there any other factor which is there which needs to be bridged before we can be called as a say an alternative, big alternative to China in terms of global supplies?
So I think it's a, one is I will continue with the same answer that I gave you, those top three things. I think that stays as the foundation to get into this. Second, as Indian companies, because you don't have the feet on street in those countries, right? Rest of the countries. So large multinationals, including where I used to work before, you had the footprint in those locations, right? From manufacturing to the sales network, right? That's equally important. If you talk about go-to-market today, you start from scratch.
Correct.
Right? So, but can we reach there? Absolutely. So there's no dearth on it. If you have solid, again, going all over the place means nothing to me. You got to, for your respective businesses, you got to identify top 5, 7, 10 markets, find out, do a due diligence on that. What does it mean? What are the market size of that? Which are the customers? How do they sell? What is the buying behavior? Basis that you form your strategy. Do you go direct? Do you go through distribution? Do you need feet on street? Do you need technology center? Do you need a factory? Those investments will be required in those countries.
Understood.
So I think it's like what I said before, and a combination of this is what is required.
Understood.
And last but not the least, I would say, if you want to see the reality, just wait for a couple of years and we'll show you how it happens.
Understood. Sir, and for an Indian brand, so for an Indian company, the brand would be well known within India itself. So let it be the dealers or customers, etc., who are selling them, it will be well known here. But generally, when we speak to other capital goods companies, what they say is that the export customers, especially the Western world, they don't know that much about that particular product, in spite of the fact that we have a capability or we have the product, right product, etc. So, so there is a small quotient of intangible brand which is there. So, do you accept the fact? Do you kind of think that that is also a kind of a barrier which will be breached over time?
Yes and no. Yes means I keep saying that if you're part of a multinational, most of my life I spent in large multinationals. So you're blessed to have the network, you're blessed to have a channel, you are blessed to have a brand. Now, having said that, you have an opportunity to create something for future.
Understood.
Right? So it won't be an easy task. That's why I said I always talk about two things. One is get your fundamentals clear. Right? The foundation has to be right. You cannot export to these large economies, especially, I'm not talking about smaller countries, I'm talking about large economies. If your fundamentals are not right, if you are not able to show value technology at par or better than your multinationals, or the quality of the product is either better or equal to what you are showing there. I think that's the way. It's a long drawn process because, especially for example, we are in power sector, we are industrial sector. I met a lot of customers, a power sector, typically you have these utility companies. So I met with a lot of them in US, in Europe, a couple of months back, and the process is already triggered, right? It's a long journey, but it's not impossible. So you have to see what your niche is. What do you want to be known for? So, and no customer will just buy there. They will come here, audit your entire facility to see that end to end, right? From getting the order till you get cash, what is the total cycle that you have? How are you efficient, or is there too much of hand-holding and bureaucracy in the system? I mean, so you have to qualify. Important is we need to scale up ourselves to that global level. See what the top multinational reputed brand is doing today and plan a way that you can do better than that company.
Understood.
And then what I said, on the manufacturing operation side, and second is your go-to-market. How do you do that? As I said, pick up top 5, 6, 7, whatever your appetite is, and build your strategy very, very clearly. And then, last but not the least, flawless execution of that.
Understood.
You have to go cracking on it. There's no other way of it.
Understood. one more point is that we know that this is a relatively cyclical industry. So we would like to kind of reduce the cyclicality a bit. And one important aspect is services. Services, after sales service. So if there is a product which is there, in many cases there will be an after sales service which is there. From an India perspective itself, do you think there is still scope for services to grow for not only say the regular products, for the new products, but the regular products also?
The answer is absolutely. I think that itself is a big area. So I think the concept of service in India we have been having is, what you heard in the beginning is, it's not a service doesn't mean breakdown and then repair it. That's called either breakdown maintenance or just correct something. But service as an offering, service, recently, I was discussing with the team and I talked about, do we have product management guy for service offerings? And the audience was looking at me, what is he talking about? Product management, marketing is typically for the product. When you talk about service, what do you mean by that? And those are the kinds of things we have to get. We have not taken that seriously, So service itself can be a vertical. And you have to start from the product management because the heart of it. What are the offerings for the product that you have? How do you solve customers' problem? To me, that is the product management. So conceptualize what that offering is, consolidate, build it into a page and see this is my Street Fighter. And then train your sales guys to go and sell to the customer what is in for them. And so yes, absolutely very positive about it. I think service itself is a huge, huge opportunity that India can encash on. But it has to be done well.
Understood. Moving on to electronics, because of the paucity of time. So you had talked about the auto industry in the 80s and 90s, how it had scaled up during that point of time, where not only the OEMs were there, but even the suppliers, including the component suppliers, etc., had thrived, and even today are thriving. And electronic industry till say pre-COVID was mostly an import-dependent industry here in the country. But the government is trying to change that, and a lot of incentives are being given. So how do you see the electronic industry? Do you see it being the next auto industries of 90s?
I think, yes, there's a huge opportunity that it can be a game changer, what probably auto industry did in 1980s. Semiconductor electronics can do the same. And if you look at statistics, it actually shows, like mobile phones have been a classic case.
Yeah.
If you look at the exports, how it has grown, the import versus export substitution, I think it's completely reversed over the last 2 decades, so which is fantastic. Now, I'll step into semiconductors a bit on, I think the way government is supporting semiconductor chips now, I wish it had happened 2 decades or 3 decades back. Today we would have been in a very, very different situation.
Correct.
And none of these semiconductor companies can thrive without the government support because the capital investment is huge. For example, we'll be investing approximately $1 billion in OSAT. So one facility is already operational, second one is in progress, so we should be producing about 15 million chips a day. That's the kind of, and all put together, with the government fundings that is coming, I think India would have approximately 45 to 48 million chips a day capability over the next 3 years or so.
Okay.
So, and if you tell me chip, where does it go? Anything electronics, you will need a chip, right? From your phone to what you're putting here, to this, to mobile towers, to TV, to whatever you name it.
Correct.
I talk about digitization, AI, everything needs a chip. So,
yeah, correct.
So I think that'll come pretty handy in terms of being self-reliant. And I just want to add one example, personal example. A couple of years back, if you remember, there was shortage of chips. Remember a couple of years back? And we were in such a difficult situation. We had large machines ready, but just because of that one chip, I was not able to ship out. The machines worth 2 crores, 3 crores, 5 crores was sitting in the dock just for a small chip. And guess what? It's funny example, but that's what we did. We bought 500 washing machines,
Okay.
took out the chip from there,
Okay.
put it here, and shipped out the machine that we threw out the
The
washing
washing
machine.
machines.
500 of those.
Okay.
I mean, that was the kind of nervousness that you can get into.
Okay.
And if you don't have that technology, everybody was dependent on Taiwan, and these are the couple of countries that you are dependent on. So getting that technology, not only funding, also the technology. I think important is now adoption of this technology, learning with humility, rather than saying I know it all, is very, very important. And that's what we are learning with our partners as we are setting up our new facilities for OSAT.
Okay. And when we talked about OSAT, obviously I believe that it is the third stage after designing, manufacturing of the chip, and then OSAT would be the packaging part.
Yeah.
So, do you think there is still a long runway for us to do a lot more in terms of manufacturing, like what a TSMC or something?
No, I think if you put all the top few companies who are getting into this field, we are covering the entire spectrum. And you rightly said there are three portions of it. We as a company today, we are investing into the two ends of the spectrum, which is OSAT, which is the end of it, and the first one, which is the design piece of it. Because what we always have been thinking about is getting the brain power into the country. Okay, and when we look at some of the data, globally, chip designing, semiconductor, 20% of designers are Indians.
Indians only, yeah, correct.
So, and that's huge, So you cannot go. And most of these are, I heard about global capability centers of large MNCs.
Yeah.
Most of them are sitting out of
Bangalore,
Bangalore
yeah,
and
correct,
Chennai and these places. So
Correct.
so we are already making investment. The company we have, X0, that's what we set up in Bangalore with offices in US, in Turkey, in China, is the radio frequency semiconductor company. And we'll keep investing into this, probably have more M&As that we are looking to keep complementing on it. So we right now are focusing on the two ends of spectrum, that one, and also the OSAT piece of it. Now the next question, if it comes in between, we will probably look at it, but as of today, we are not there.
Understood, sir. And from this, I would say that this journey started in electronics, say, past 4 or 5 years. Are we there in terms of, once again, I'm trying to benchmark with global quality. I mean, so electronics is kind of new to India in terms of manufacturing, but OSAT or chip manufacturing has been there for decades globally. So you have companies based out of Taiwan, Malaysia, etc., who have been doing this for quite some time. So where is the catch-up still that needs to happen? Say at the product level, manufacturing level, technology level, where is the journey still a long way to go?
So one is the adoption of the technology, which is, as we are doing, and most of the companies who are into it, including us, have the JVs to learn from there, right? So when I said, I use the word learn with humility is very, very critical, because we cannot do a jugaad in that.
Correct.
And if you want, I can talk about an example that I personally learned was, and when I looked at the plant when it was manufactured, when we did the inauguration of CG Semi, and so when the team, early on, when the team came back to us for the investments on setting up the factory, getting the machinery, equipment, jigs, fixtures, so I challenged on a couple of things. I said, jigs, fixtures, why are you importing all the way from US and all these places? India is hub of manufacturing, and me coming from there, I was born on the shop floor. So I challenged some of these things. And then we had a board member from our partners there. He said, hey, Amar, the requirement and the accuracy of that is very, very high. I'm not sure if they will be able. Do you want to experiment? I said, no, hands up.
Okay.
So let's just copy. So of course it was expensive, but I said, okay, let's go, because you need to learn first. Okay. Assuming what I learned 20 years back may not hold true today. So important is, first step is just accept what they know of and then keep building on it. And now when I see the way the whole plant has been set up, fully automated. Now imagine this small mini plant that we started is 500,000 chips a day. 500,000 is pretty big number a day. So it cannot happen physical and manual. You can put 500 people there. It cannot happen, right? So important, the quality of air required from compressors into that room. The cleanliness standards are probably more stringent than an operation theater.
Understood.
The temperature control is phenomenal. I remember when they took us inside, it was like we are actually going for a surgery. Everything closed, nothing, only your eyes were
Correct.
there. So, and not everybody is allowed to be inside. So I think we need to learn that kind of a standard. Chalta hai kind of attitude doesn't work here. So first step, learn that, adopt, assimilate, and then keep improvising on that. Keep bringing the technology. Like I said, design company, we are developing chip designing, because that's where fundamentally Indians are very strong at. That's what we are bringing back to the country.
Understood. And moving on from the government perspective for this industry, for the electronic industry, they have facilitated a lot, they have incentivized a lot in terms of manufacturing, in terms of incentivizing people to, in terms of manufacture more domestically, give subsidies for capex, etc. Is there something else that can be done by the government side, or is it like they have done already a lot and it's up to the manufacturers to start delivering?
No, I think if you see engagement from the government side, I think what is being done, important is to continue with that momentum, not change it. The risk could also be if you bring in too much of bureaucracy in between, which I don't see today. The current government, we're very comfortable the way they are operating. Even up to the minister's level comes and does the project review with us.
Understood.
So imagine that's the kind of involvement that the government is having. I have not seen long back that the government would come and do a project review of a particular project. So I think that engagement is good. We just need to stay course and make it happen.
Understood. Yeah, so I think these are the broad questions that I had.
Sure.
So we can throw the floor open for Q&A from the audience. Many of them would be interested in having a chat with you.
Hi, sir. Sir, one question on the export opportunity. I think a lot of Indian companies, capital goods companies, are now talking about exporting to Europe, post-COVID especially. When you look at this entire opportunity, one is this opportunity real? And more importantly, is this durable? Because, I mean, one is the labor shortage and energy issues which are happening right now, which are presenting the opportunity. But from a long-term view, because you need to invest a lot in the supply chain, people, front end, even the after-sales support also. So just trying to understand, is this opportunity real and durable? And how to think about this? And is this opportunity only present in certain pockets, or it is all across? And second, when you think about this entire opportunity, do we need to get the capex cycle right in the European continent, or this is a replacement demand, therefore it will not matter? I mean, so one is on the opportunity, whether it is real and durable, and second is, does it need to align with the capex cycle in Europe? Thank you.
I think I will answer that in two phases. One is the opportunity real for exports to Europe, since that was your question? I would say absolutely yes. And when you say Europe, Europe is almost, 28, 29 countries, and every country is so different. And that was my learning about 7, 8 years back when I started handling Europe. When I used to talk to French guys versus Swiss guys versus Germans, everybody was so different. And even the customer buying behavior were different. Unless you say large multinational and centralized buying is there, so it would be very, very different. So why do I say that yes, opportunity is real? Important is getting your fundamentals right. And my personal experience, there are 2 countries out of entire Europe where we do a lot of business. And these countries are absolutely welcoming. So they say, why don't you give me more? Okay, because why do you earn that? One was your reliability and quality of the product. Second is your serviceability. Anything that happens, even though you may not have your service set up there, but at the drop of a hat, there's somebody to hear you out. That's why the personal connect cannot be replaced by chatbots and everything getting, you get irritated. I'm sure if you see, you go to helpline, you'll say chatbot and then somebody is not available. It's so pretty irritating, right? I'm not against technology, but I'm saying nothing can replace after first connect with chatbot is good, but then there needs to be somebody who can really take it forward with the customer, and that's where you bring them in. There may be some countries in Europe who will be a bit restrictive. If you don't manufacture in, is it made in EU, then you take it, so you got to be careful. So depending on the product line that you're talking about, you are supposed to assess that, what makes sense for that. To the last question on capex in India or in Europe, obviously it has to make sense. So if your payback, your IRR at what NPV makes sense, then just go and do it. When I say we got to, Indian companies as large multinationals, you cannot say everything will happen in India. And the whole world will take from me, but I will not take anything from the world. It doesn't happen like that. So you have to give and take both sides. So purely depends on what stage of exports you are in. If it's just feeble, then you have to just go cracking and do it. If you are already at 20-25% kind of thing, then you can always think about, does it make sense for me to invest there?
So just a quick follow-up. What I meant was, when you are going out there in Europe, do we need to get the capex cycle in Europe right? For example, you're investing in transmission and distribution product. Do you need to get right that cycle as well in Europe before you start investing in, or is this more we are doing more replacement demand there, so it will not matter?
So a couple of things, I think it's an interesting question. So I keep getting this question from I know there are a lot of investors sitting here. Like we are investing, last quarter we talked about 800 crore investment in a factory. This quarter of the board meeting, we took the approval from the board for another 800 crores. And we'll keep doing. That's the question, say, oh, how much is the demand? Is it real or not real? So there are data points available, right? Every country you can pick up the data and see. In India, you will get it from Power Grid Corporation. From Europe, you will get from their utility companies. When you do business and you have to take decisions, a combination of the data, which is realistic, factual, and second is also your gut feeling, how much of risk appetite do you have? If you are in the market, you have feet on the street, you are on the ground, then you know what you're talking about. So no book will tell you this is the right time. It's like investing in the market. There's no right time for investing in the market, right? At any point is right. So it's the same thing for capex. You need to be sure about if you are grounded and not only sitting in the boardroom, then you can take those right decisions.
Any other question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. So, the whole China manufacturing angle and the India leg of it, you hear a lot of bravado that India's great and India's catching up, but the fact is China's many years ahead, okay? I'm just accepting a point, and I visit a lot of factories in China. So you don't have your clusters in place in a lot of industries, you don't have your technology, and they've invested heavily in R&D that you can't close that gap with just investment, you need partnerships. So the question really is that if India really has to become a manufacturing hub or whatever you want to call it, you need to work together with China, then work against China, and use like if you go to a factory there, they have 6,000 robots and 60 people, right? I mean, that kind of productivity that you get over there, and everything's captive built over there. So my question is, what should India manufacturing run as a strategy to be able to, one, fill these gaps and to be competitive, not today, but 10 years from now, you can be a significant manufacturing hub?
I think very good question, and probably we didn't get that here. You talk about robotics, automation, and one of very close subject to my heart. If you look at today's our adoption of technology and robotics in India, we are what? If I remember the last figures, it was 7 robots to 10,000 people. 7 robots to 10,000 people. China is about 400 robots to 10,000 people, and South Korea is 1,000 robots to 10,000 people. So even ahead of China is South Korea. Now, that is very critical point on you heard me saying muscle power and brain power. Now, if we continue to build on because the population of India is so big, so let's put 100 extra people or 500 extra people, we will never be competitive. More people, more complexity, it will just change hands and people will keep justifying their job. It doesn't mean that people won't get the jobs. There will be much more jobs we can create. But coming back to your question on technology, there are 2-3 ways of doing it. One is build it from the scratch because India has the muscle power and brain power. So people are there, education standards are fairly good. May not be best in the world, but it's fairly good. So you have people, so build it from the scratch. Now if time is a constraint, it takes you 2-3 years, 4 years to build it, then look at the joint ventures, whether with China, with Korea, with US, with Europe, whatever it works for your respective businesses, I would urge go in for that. Or do the third thing is the buyout. So these are the only 3 ways to do it, depending on at what stage of cycle you are in, is take any of those decisions based that. But I liked your question on technology adoption. I think we are way, way, way behind. We still see a lot of, the only place I'm still impressed with is the auto industry and auto component industry. I think there are a lot of manufacturing practices I am impressed with. I'm not impressed with many industrial or power kind of technologies.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. You talked about the stage of the cycle where we are in. You have your fingers in the 2 biggest pies in the country right now, the power and let's say the railways. Where are we in the cycle here? Like how many years of, because we are almost suffering from like underdevelopment in both of those areas. So how many years of cycle do you envisage these 2 to be?
Very good question. And if I have to break down the problem a little bit more, let's start with power. And power, again, further if you break it down, we have the power transformer, distribution transformer, and switch gears, medium voltage and ultra high voltage. And let's take transformer for example. I'm very comfortable with what stage we are in and where we will be next 8 to 9 months. Right? In terms of technology, we used to be less than 400 kV kind of transformer that we are making. We are already making now 765. In last 1 year, we have graduated to that technology. The new factory that is coming up should be operational next year, will be doing up to 1200 kV. So you see the transition. So the in-house development team, they are catching up with what my expectation is. If somebody would have told me it will take 3 years, then I would go out and find out where to get it from. Similar story I see in the switchgear piece as well on doing that. Now, if I switch my gears to the industrial piece of business, motors today, India, if you see, is still on I1, 2 kind of efficiency that we are working on, right? And I3 we already launched. I3 and 4 and 5 plus is what the world is talking about. And I think I'm very clear in next 1 year I should be there. Getting there. And if you see, the only jump from I1 to I3 upgrade will give me approximately $500 million savings if I just replace those motors. And that's huge saving for the country. Saving not in terms of money, but the power availability. When I say saving is also power availability. Today I'm working with one of the companies. They have about 2,000 motors. And they are working on capex to opex model. They are okay with opex model that we make the investment, we guarantee this kind of efficiency, and they want to pay us on periodic basis. So that's the way, that links back to the service kind of a setup is what, if you're confident about what you're offering, all these opportunities will come in. Now, the only thing to your question is, for example, one of the technology in transformer I don't have today. And will I get it in 12 months? No, which is typically called HVDC. I don't have that technology. Can I build it in 12 months? No. So I'm absolutely open right now, beg, borrow, steal, whatever you can do. So whether it could be a JV or I buy something from there or, we have some team, they come back with innovation that we can do it. So you have to be very clear on what technology within the product segments you can get within 12 months, then go ahead, do it. Right now, as I said, this technology I cannot, then you have to find a way to get it.
But that's from a product cycle perspective. I guess my question was more from a CapEx cycle, from an industry perspective. Where do you see VR, which innings we are in when it comes to power, which innings we are in when it comes to industrial or railways?
So power, I think we are way behind on where we should have been. Okay, and as I said, my investors have been asking the question, you have spent 800 crores there, 800 crores here. Believe me, even this capacity that I'm creating will be sucked by India itself. And as I meet customers outside the country as well, and when I talk about the lead times, those are crazy lead times, what they have today, and when I'm offering, they said, let's not talk about pricing. We talk about the lead time. So I think we are way behind on CapEx. The more and more, I don't think there's a dearth for not only us, I would say even all the industry players who are there. We need to find a way, how do we accelerate that journey of CapEx cycle? And believe me, I'm very sure, and we'll all hear, next 5 years, nothing is going to happen this demand. Not only in India, across the globe. So absolutely behind on that. Anybody wants to invest into that area, this is the place to be doing that.
And industrials, railways?
Industrials, yes. So I touch a bit on the motors piece. Then if I touch a bit on the railways business, because that's another vertical that we have, yes. Do I have technology gaps? Yes. Do we plan? And they're a combination. I don't want to waste too much of time here into the details, but there are a couple of technologies that people are developing in-house. I think about 14 months back, we used to have 30 engineers, R&D engineers, and today have close to 100. So that's the kind of investment that we are doing in the organization for the respective businesses to keep building the technology. Having said that, the technologies that we don't have, which will take longer. So right now we are working on those to either have a JV or buy it out from somewhere else to make a difference. Because the world will gradually move from a product company to the solutions company. So if it's not so evident now, it will definitely be in the next couple of years. So our focus definitely is in that area as well.
Thanks for the... I had a question. Thanks for the insightful session. I wanted to get an idea about... Over here.
Sorry.
Yeah. I wanted to get an idea about the semiconductor piece. It's a long game, as you said. And within that, what was the thought process behind getting into the semiconductor design? I understand that we have the talent and the thought process could be having in-house IP. But if you could expand on that, what is the long-term vision that we are looking at? And how important has Renesas been as a JV partner, since you talk about JV and this being completely new? And what is CG doing to lead from the forefront, given that it's a very nascent stage right now for the entire Indian market?
So yeah, fair question. So semiconductor, if you see, even we have published now, we have the vertical of power, we have the vertical of industrial, and then we are also showing semiconductor as a vertical for us. And why do we show that is because this is one of the future area that we will do. It's more technology. What do you bring to the country, right? So why design is critical? Because that's where the brain goes. Right? If you see the entire value chain from design to fab to OSAT, that's where the game starts, right? And then you all work together with rest of these. So customer acquisition starts from there itself. And as I said, of course, I will not be able to dwell into too many details, but that is one area that we'll keep making investments into, not only from M&A point of view, but even from people point of view. And for some time you may see we are spending more money, but that is all investment into the right people. So recently we hired 3 very senior people across the globe who had this niche capability, which if I start developing, it'll take me probably a decade or so to reach there. So the best thing is to get them on board on your side, and they will start driving it in the right direction. So it's a very, very important business for us, and you'll keep hearing more and more as we get our investments through our board. We'll share it.
Yeah, and I had one last question on capital allocation. Given how CG right now has lots of opportunities within power, within semiconductors, and industrial as well. So it's more strategic that I wanted to get an idea, how are you kind of trying to decide on the opportunities? There was a 3,000 crore QIP fundraise also that you had recently done. So, and the FCF of about 500 crores that you keep generating. So lots of cash and lots of opportunities, and the thought process that you give an example of the lead time to kind of learn a technology versus hiring someone. So what are the filters or metrics probably that you kind of look at in terms of taking the decision and making the capex that kind of cuts across, because you are a conglomerate? If you could share that, that would be great.
So I think it's a good question. So the good news is that we are very well structured, not only for CG Power, but Murugappa as a group is a very good structured process, gate process for capital allocation, so which works very well. So over and above the metrics, your IRRs and NPVs and all, that's a kind of given. But what do we look at it from the business point of view? One of the things that we are, as you know, we run at a high P kind of, number, and we look at that, which is the other business where we make the investment will give you something similar or around the same number. And second is, how are we complementing existing business and getting the new technologies? And third one is, you talked about a lot of money, but honestly, when I look at my pipeline of opportunities that I have, so probably even this fund may not be adequate after some time. So those are the opportunities.
There was one question from
so my question was that, do you think that Apple manufacturing in India and increasing indigenization, can it be a big game changer for India in manufacturing in general, and in particular for people like Tata Electronics who are working with them? Like the author of Apple in China thinks it was a big game changer for China, though he's quite pessimistic about India. Any thoughts on that?
I think, there are a lot of political issues into that, so I'll not touch any of those, what China does and what America does and what India does, because we don't control those things. What is important fundamentally, what I touched in the beginning of this, so strengthen your manufacturing processes. Your quality standards need to be the best in the world, and your manufacturing costs need to be the lowest in the world. There used to be a term when we were taught, I joined as a GET in a Japanese company when I started my career. There used to be a project, my boss was a Japanese, and he used to teach us QCD, quality up, cost down, delivery fast. So I still have that memory more than 3 decades back, and that holds true today as well. So if that is what we can control today as Apple or any of the electronics manufacturing company, how do we have that consistency on that? Leaving aside those political things, I'm sure today or tomorrow they'll fade away. If you are fundamentally strong, you are taking care of customers, nobody can stop you.
But does Apple bring something to the table? Because that's the perception that they're probably the best in terms of manufacturing their...
I will not go into the different companies because I'm not allowed to talk on their behalf, but I would say in general for electronics industry or mobile industry.
Thanks.
Any other question from anyone? Any question from anyone else?
Good.
Well, good. If there's no further questions, thanks a lot, sir. It was great hosting you, for this keynote.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's have a big round of applause on behalf of Avendus Park and everyone in the room. Thank you so much for giving us a lot of food for thought and action.